is Swapnil Bhartiya, and we are here at the TFIR podcast. And today we have our show, Sheng Liang, the founder of Rancher Labs. So first of all, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
So before we talk about the announcement that you're going to make today, can you tell us about, what does Rancher Lab do?
Yeah, Rancher Labs builds an enterprise container management platform that's based on Kubernetes. Kubernetes is hitting mainstream, and with Rancher, with our product called Rancher, customers can launch a container management platform and Kubernetes service very, very quickly without having to put in a lot of development themselves.
What is the primary problem that you're trying to solve with Rancher?
The industry is moving along very, very quickly. As most enterprise start the digital transformation process, they need a way to deploy and manage their application very efficiently while maintaining security and reliability. And Kubernetes is the key enabling technology. And Rancher just makes it very easy for enterprise organizations to adopt Kubernetes throughout their DevOps process.
What would I see as typical Rancher Labs customer?
We're 100% open source product. So, most of our users are, so we have users and customers. A lot of users don't really have to pay us anything to start using Rancher. And they're basically any organization who does a lot of software development and deployment in-house. So those would include, it's really across the entire spectrum, across, financial services, technology, retail, government, manufacturing, telco. We pretty much, these days, everyone is writing software and operating software a lot of times to, power the in-house business process or be the back end for some mobile or web service. So you see that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these folks use our open source software. And as they put that software into mission critical production use, we offer support for the Rancher open source software. So that's our business model, is just to provide a support subscription for our users.
So that's more or less like the Red Hat model. When Red Hat was still independent.
It's very close to that. There's a whole bunch of, I think, open source business model is really going through a period of revitalization and renaissance. Beyond used to be just Red Hat, and now you have Cloudera, Elastic, MongoDB, all of these vendors have a similar business model these days.
Is it that, you just offer support for that open source project, or there are some additional features or functionality or some secret sauce also that your customers get, or is just about support?
Right now, that's all we do. Mm-hmm. In theory, we could also provide, proprietary closed source value add modules. Mm-hmm. We haven't done that yet. Mm-hmm. It's just right now the market is early enough, and the customer need for support is strong enough that we're able to grow a very healthy and fast growing business with just a pure support business model.
Excellent. And this is the kind of model that, should be there, as a de facto model for software development or business model, either way.
I think so. I think for software, this is a great model. Yeah. I think the other model is you can also run a cloud service. I think that's a great business model as well.
So do you feel threatened by cloud, as with the Redis labs and all those things happen? Are you worried about, or no, you're not? No, that has always been part of open source culture, where somebody will take the code and some will contribute, some will not contribute.
Personally, I'm not too concerned about it because we're at the stage right now that there's just a lot of innovation. The speed of innovation is accelerated greatly, and these days it's less of an issue to like invent a piece of technology and monetize it for years or even decades like you used to be able to do before. I mean, these days it's really more about continuous innovation. You just have to continue to add value on top of what you've already built, and you can add value as proprietary add-on. There's nothing wrong with that. Or you can add value by offering a way to operate your own software, like what a lot of cloud providers are doing. Or you can add value by just continuously innovate, just being able to bring out new features that are just ahead of all the alternatives or competition, and I think customers appreciate that as well. So I think ultimately this is no different from what a lot of other industries are also going through, and I think ultimately the innovation is what's going to win in the marketplace.
A lot of consolidation is also happening in the market. Last year we saw Red Hat acquisition, Heptio acquisition, a lot of. So do you think that will also continue?
I think so. I think it's interesting though. I think what's happening is the adoption. As promising as Kubernetes and Istio, those cloud native technologies are, they're actually still in very, very early stages of adoption. So historically, by sort of market adoption cycle standard, these are very, very early markets. But on the other hand, the big players, unlike 5 years ago or 10 years ago, where they moved a lot slower. These days, big players are very aggressive in terms of wanting to take advantage of these new business opportunities and enrich their product portfolio. So I think it's interesting. It is really a new kind of consolidation, because in the old days, consolidation typically happens in a more laggard market where things are lacking growth, and they just wanted less competition. So hopefully everyone gets better margin. But it's actually not quite that. So we're actually seeing big companies moving very aggressively into this very early, although very promising market.
It's exciting because that also means that the market is also maturing, and of course innovation is happening, and things are kind of getting will settle down, so we can focus on solving the problem.
If you go to Kubernetes, I'm sure you've heard this saying, Kubernetes is becoming boring, and it's kind of a good thing. And I have very mixed feelings about the statement, because on one hand, of course, it's good. That means it's reliable and it's enterprise ready. But on the other hand, I really don't think the market is actually developed as much as what a lot of people believe. I don't think we're at the stage right now. The current stage of technology would just propel the adoption into mass market. I actually think more innovation is needed and will happen in order to really make Kubernetes successful. So we're actually, on one hand, I think that the core, the guts of Kubernetes, the foundation of Kubernetes is very, very solid. But on the other hand, we at least ourselves are working on a whole bunch of things, around this wonderful core technology to really drive adoption amongst the mainstream market. So I think there's still a lot of work that remains.
Right. A good example, Linux kernel, it has become totally commoditized. It has become boring. But just day before yesterday, Google announced Stadia, and which is running on Debian Linux, So
exactly. And yeah, exactly. Kubernetes is very, very far away from where Linux kernel is, right? And I think there'll be, many, many more years of very interesting innovation. And there will be, at some point, a lot of these things will start influencing perhaps the Kubernetes core or Kubernetes foundation as well. But it's too early to say.
Right. Since we're talking about innovation, solve problem, a new version of Rancher is out. Tell us a bit about what is new in there.
So last year we shipped Rancher 2.0. It was a great release. It is we took the stance at that time that the biggest thing about Rancher 2.0 is that we're no longer just a Kubernetes distro. We believe Kubernetes is the new industry standard that in fact should be provided by the infrastructure providers. I use the term infrastructure provider because that includes both public cloud and a private data center. So VMware, AWS, GCE, all these guys should be doing Kubernetes, and that means software vendors like us can't just rest on our ability to be able to stand up doing day 1, day 2 operations for Kubernetes itself. We really need to start adding some more value. So that was Rancher 2.0. We built a lot of value on top of different kinds of Kubernetes clusters in terms of managing authentication, managing policies, deploying applications. So 2.2 is actually an extension of, obviously it's considered a minor release. It's a 0.2 release. It's not like a 3.0 release. So in that sense, it is what we consider a minor feature release, but it's still pretty significant. We come out with two of those releases a year. So we're getting into this twice a year release cycle. And the focus for 2.2 is to really improve the mission critical readiness, the operational readiness of Kubernetes, not just for Kubernetes, but also mostly for applications running on top of Kubernetes. So a lot of things we did in 2.2. We really greatly enhanced our integration with a lot of monitoring and alerting and logging technologies that are part of the CNCF software suite, technologies like Prometheus, for example. And we've actually announced that before, and now it's hitting GA. But the biggest piece of innovation in 2.2 is the ability to deploy applications across multiple Kubernetes clusters. So this has really been a big deal, because as we start working with more Kubernetes enterprise customers on Kubernetes, they are starting to worry about things like backup, restore, high availability, geo-redundancy. And in many of those cases, they're not dealing with one Kubernetes cluster anymore. So they're basically dealing with multiple Kubernetes clusters, because they don't really necessarily want, say a single Kubernetes control plane span multiple data centers or multiple clouds. In theory, you could do that. You could actually do that pretty well, but it adds to the complexity. And it's sort of, if you kind of make a mistake operating Kubernetes, then you risk bringing down your multiple data centers. Or your applications running on multiple data centers. So a pattern that we see emerging is actually people run many Kubernetes clusters. They could run a Kubernetes cluster for each data center or for each cloud that they use, or they could run a Kubernetes cluster for different environments, dev environment, test environments, pre-production environments, production environments, or sometimes they even go as far as running a Kubernetes cluster for each application, or even running multiple Kubernetes clusters for each application, because they want this application to deploy across multiple geographic locations. So in 2.2, we built a lot of capability to support that. And just to give you an example, one of the things we had to build was essentially a multi-cluster DNS service. So if you imagine if I deploy the same application across two clusters, one on the East Coast US, one on the West Coast US. So what a DNS service like a Route 53 or Cloudflare would do is to redirect users' traffic. East Coast users will go to East Coast unless that cluster or that availability zone, that region goes down, then it redirects the user to the West Coast. So we built a lot of integration between Kubernetes and these global DNS services, so that people deploy applications can use these DNS services, these global DNS services, to help redirect their traffic between multiple clusters. So that's the key, really, between multiple clusters, because within the same cluster, Kubernetes already came with that built-in support.
Right.
We're all set with ingress controllers, service load balancers, and service discovery. All these things are done. But really, the envelope we're pushing for 2.0 is how you actually make applications resilient across multiple clusters. So another thing that we did in 2.2 is just the resiliency of these Kubernetes clusters themselves across multiple regions. So for example, if you're running a Kubernetes cluster and then what 2.2 would allow you to do is it will allow you to back up the configuration of that Kubernetes cluster, everything in etcd database, your application configuration. And then if for whatever reason you completely lose all the nodes, or you lost, there's an outage, and then you can easily recover that state elsewhere, keep your business up and running. So this is really the level of resiliency that our customers demand now, and 2.2 is a step toward the direction to continue to increase the ability to support mission critical apps, the reliability of applications.
Excellent. One feature that caught my attention was the multi-tenant catalog for privacy. So for sensitive projects, so what would you consider sensitive project, and what is the use case for this?
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting use case as well, because Kubernetes has a catalog feature called Helm charts, right? It's really been very, very popular, and Rancher made some enhancements on top of Helm chart, made it easier to use. So you really deploy a Helm chart is now very similar to buying something on Amazon or deploying an application on Apple App Store. So this is all good, except you're still just doing it in one shared app store, or like everyone, it's an e-commerce site everyone can go to. But as we get into the enterprise, that doesn't quite work anymore, because what a lot of customers were telling us is they really want different groups, different teams inside their organization to effectively have a private store, like have a private catalog, have a private app store. Like if I'm a group, designing a particular say financial application, I don't really want other parts of my company to see or even have access to all the applications I'm developing and I'm deploying. Number one, they wouldn't understand it anyway. It's irrelevant to their day-to-day work. Number two, there are also security and isolation issues. They probably shouldn't even see it, because these applications, once deployed, could cause IP leak, could cause compliance issues, could cause security issues. So essentially, the multi-tenant catalog feature in 2.2 is what allows different groups, different teams inside a large organization to set up their own private catalog, so that at various levels, at various organizational levels, so that they could make the catalog part of their application development and deployment CI/CD process, and they would be able to retain a high degree of isolation and compliance and governance. That's the feature.
Was there any influence of GDPR on this feature, or it's totally unrelated?
Yeah, I mean, I think GDPR is actually a fundamental driver behind a lot of these things. I mean, for example, cluster support. A lot of our original thinking around multi-cluster that really became like a hard requirement, like starting last year. I think it kind of coincided with the introduction of GDPR. We definitely saw that. So it is. I mean, I would say, to be honest, even without GDPR, I think for say. I mean, I think it would just even the law of physics, the speed of light kind of thing would probably also made, probably also would have made it impractical to really have one big cluster that span the world.
Right.
I don't think people would have been doing that anyway. But certainly GDPR would made it very apparent that it's just made a lot of people understand why multi-clusters is very important. Just like today in the cloud, I mean, people doing cloud computing, cloud is I guess in theory a global resource pool, but every cloud provider, every cloud user now take it for granted. Inside the cloud, there are regions and availability zones. So the cloud is actually segmented. So the same thing here, with this is really what we're talking about with multi-cluster support. And and private catalog, I mean, a lot of it is also, we can limit a particular catalog to a particular cluster. So that was a very important thing, not just to a particular team, but they can limit it so that certain applications can only be deployed in this particular cluster, which resides in a particular geographic location. So I believe one of the fundamental requirements that drove that feature would be GDPR.
Right. Yeah, things are changing, and I think in US also something will happen eventually. We'll see. So yeah, these are some core features, and you say it's a minor release, not a major release. When it comes to these upgrades, like whether it's 2.2 or let's say when the 3.0 will come out, how easy or difficult is it for your users, whether it's open source user or paid customers, to upgrade from one version, whether it's point release, a minor release, or major release?
We between those, 2.2, 2.3, like I want to clarify, we call it a minor, it's a dot release, but it is very major. So usually from 1.0 to 2.0.
Your minor is also major.
Those are like major changes, right? Like Kubernetes today is still at 1.14.
Right.
So I think the industry is generally like if you look at Rancher between 1.0 and 2.0, it was actually a re-platform. So the 1.0 was built on Docker, 2.0 was built on Kubernetes, and we really weren't even able to support a smooth upgrade. We had to ask all of our users to basically do a migration. They were able to preserve the workload, but it's not a simple upgrade. It was actually kind of a migration process. Whereas within the 2.x series, I think 2.x will be with us for many years. Within 2.x series, generally the upgrade is very smooth. Then what happens is then you have like 2.2.1, 2.2.2. Those are what we call maintenance releases. So when you get into a maintenance release, these are usually like patches, and these are things like usually security holes and stuff like that. So people really just have to patch on an ongoing basis. So what we call a 2.2, 2.3 a dot release is where we introduce major features like multi-tenant catalog and global DNS. But then in a dot release, in a maintenance release, is generally they won't be
new feature. It will be just enhancements or
exactly. But upgrade generally supported for both the dot release and dot release, for both what we consider a minor release and maintenance release.
What I'm trying to understand is how easy it is to just hit a button or run a command and it will upgrade the whole stack, or they have to do extra work.
Yeah, upgrade is always a complex process, and I think we've done as much as possible to automate it. So generally, that's a big part of our value add, and it's like I think if you do a maintenance release upgrade, it's generally literally like it's very transparent. But between 2.1 and 2.2, I think it's still largely automated. But we would ask the user to generally there would be some steps you do beforehand, and we would ask them to like back up the database data, just in case if something goes wrong, they can go back. And they generally go through a process. Like it's not it's because just there are just so many different pieces of technology involved. It's not as easy as like upgrading a mobile app where you just shut it down and then download the new version and start it up again. So it's not quite like that. And also during the upgrade, we have to make sure that the customer's workload is actually not impacted. So it's actually a fairly involved process, and it's carried out automatically, but generally with human supervision. It doesn't happen transparently in the background.
When you look at all these Kubernetes or cloud technologies, what you enable your customers to do is, they run those containers and they're always updated, But when you look at the whole Kubernetes or this stack, it is still the waterfall kind of model where you have to, worry about the upgrades. So this itself should move to that kind of model where customers don't have to be involved with that. So yeah.
I think that's such a great observation, because I think as an industry we're both not technically ready, and also we're also not mindset wise ready to move to that model. Right. We are making some progress though, like our recently announced K3S project. I mean that is actually a step toward a technical readiness of ease of upgrade, because it turns out to really make upgrade easy. We also need to simplify our software stack. Right? So just by simplifying it, it fundamentally makes it easier. Because otherwise, if there are, it's like a lot of things we're doing, I feel like it's a bit like, driving, like flying an airplane. And so you kind of have to go through checklists. Yes, I mean, it's mission critical. Like you can't. Like it's not really automated flying, automated driving yet. Right, and I think that's realistically where we are.
Yeah. So how to get version 2? Can people just go on GitHub and download it, or
it's available from GitHub? It's available from our website already, and then you can just go download it if you're not yet a Rancher user. If you're a Rancher user, you would just upgrade it straight from Rancher.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sheng, for talking to me today. And hopefully we will see you at the next open source conference, which is going to be KubeCon. And once again, good luck with the release, and see you soon.
Yeah, definitely. We'll be there. We're working on a whole bunch of new technologies. I can't wait to tell you more about it. So look forward to seeing you soon. Okay.
Thank you.